Okay, so welcome to week 2. I'm almost through grading. I have completed all the discussions and also the assignment for one of my sections. I have some assignments yet to grade for another section. So if you have any questions on the grading, just let me know. I think it was pretty straightforward for most people. And so I think we're ready to move on to week 2. Does anybody have any questions before I do that? Okay. All right, our objectives in week 2. Now, week 1, we just introduced HTML and the idea of tagging. And if you remember, CSS works with HTML. It's not the same as HTML, but they actually point to various tags in the code, and they actually modify the behavior of these tags. So you have a body tag, and you have like a paragraph tag or a heading tag or list item, things like that. They're over here in your HTML. And your CSS actually points to and says, you know, this one is for the body tag, and so it's going to affect the body tag, and or this one is for the paragraph tag, and it's going to affect the paragraph tag, or this one is for the list item tag, it's going to affect that. So this is the CSS is like you're modifying the HTML. The HTML has some basic behaviors and assumptions from the browser. You know, my fingers are representing tags that you like, the body tag and so on, that the browser encounters. But it first reads the CSS and says, oh, do I change how I interpret this tag? And that's what the styling will do. Now, how is that making sense? Is that starting to make sense for people? The idea that CSS is used to modify the HTML tags. You've seen some of the HTML tags already. Well, now you're going to watch the CSS come forward and make change. It'll override the defaults. Okay. So our objectives this week are to talk about this cascading style sheets, CSS, and the reason why they're called cascading, I'll go into that. Terms and terminology, difference between HTML and CSS formatting, it's completely separate. It's just different. So this is tags and this is directives. And so how the cascade, inheritance, descendant, and specificity theories affect how browsers apply CSS formatting. Now, that's pretty deep there, but all it is different ways that the CSS is going to influence and render its influence upon these tags. And those are all different ways that CSS can have the influence upon the HTML. And number 4, how CSS can format objects. Number 5, new features and capabilities of CSS3. Now, everybody realizes that HTML came out a long time ago, the first version of it, and when they had HTML 2.0 and 3.0, 4.0. Each time that HTML has been released, it's being defined by this consortium of companies or individuals, a committee, and they define the language, the set of tags, which tags are accepted, what they do, and so on. And each version of HTML has changed the set of tags. Now we're at HTML5. That's the most recent. And browsers, each time a new version of HTML is released by this committee, the browser developers, like, started off with like Netscape, and now we, Safari and Firefox and Google Chrome and Internet Explorer. They all have to write a new version of their software to be able to, the browser, to be able to read the more complex version of HTML. But at the same time, it needs to be backwards compatible. It needs to be able to still open up an HTML version 1 document or version 2, version 3. It's upwards compatible, meaning that each browser can actually access versions of HTML that were old versions, you know, files that were written in old versions. That's called upward compatibility. So CSS is doing the same thing. It came out and several years ago, version 1, now it's, and then 2, and now we're in 3. So the two go together. HTML5 and CSS3 really have come out together, and the browser developers, the companies that create the browsers, they have got to be able to accommodate both. And that's really what's going on. Okay, the second chapter this week, create a page layout. Basics of web page design, how to create design thumbnails and wireframes, how to insert and format new components into a predefined CSS layout, and how to use the code navigator to identify CSS formatting, how to check for browser compatibility. Now, my guess is that the amount of time that you spent last week, this week, it will probably be a little bit more than you did last week, just because last week was introductory, chapter 1, introducing the interface, and then chapter 2, just introducing HTML. Let me stop for a second, check to see if there's any. Oh, wow. Yeah, DJ, how many hours did you spend last week total? Yeah, I actually was going to say that I was going to guess it was about double, but I didn't want to discourage too many people.
Yeah, well, Chip, the reason I take so long is because I read the chapter, then I go back and I take notes, and I do step by step how to do the project. Sally knows because I think I helped her a long time ago, or one of the other students. I sent them an email with step-by-step instructions. But that's just how I do it, and I've still got 9 pages to go on reading on chapter 4, and I'm having problems.
All right. Yeah, there's these concepts right in here. Those are actually pretty complex. I'll try to simplify them. But that's actually chapter 3 anyway, so. All right, well, so I need everybody to kind of plan their time. I see. That's a pain. I need everybody to plan their time accordingly. All right, so chapter 3 and chapter 4, click here to download the data files. Now, it's funny the estimated times that the author of the textbook has given you. He says 1 hour and 15 minutes for chapter 3 and 1 hour for chapter 4. So it seems like the authors are a little underestimating the amount of time that it's taking us to do these. So I've got week 2 here. Week 2 data files, and then let me go to my classes. Just gonna clear this out from the last time I extracted it. In fact, I think I can probably delete that whole thing. So I'll come over here and get my download. paste it here. And then double click and it should open it all up. Once you've opened it up, you can remove the zip file. Now, one of the students was curious about how to zip up your homework, and it's really about the opposite of what I just did. You can, at this level, I should have shown you this last week, but all you do is come, if you extract it like this, you can click on the parent folder of your 2 chapters, and then do a right click, or I do a 2-finger click on my trackpad, right click, and then it's just compress. Okay, compress week 1. So that would have been last week. You know, you do your work here and change whatever files you change. I know lesson 1 didn't have any files and lesson 2 started from nothing, but this is, I like it when you just do it like that. You know, click on week 2, right click, and click compress. And that creates a single file that is just the opposite of the one that that we download and extract. Does anybody have any questions about zipping up the folder? Everybody good on that? Okay, good. Now this week, our discussion forum, I just need to remind everybody, don't forget to do this APA post of your reference. Okay, let's see. I think the rubric has changed. Click here and you can see what APA format looks like. And last week I showed you how to use Microsoft Word to format these automatically, your bibliography. All right, so let's read this. After reading about the basics of CSS in Chapter 3 and how to create a web page layout in Chapter 4, think about the process that you would go through to design a web page using your new knowledge of CSS. Research on the internet about how other web designers approach the process of web page design. What steps would you take in this process? It is important to distinguish the difference between web page design and website design. It is one thing for us to design a single page for a website. It is quite another thing for us to design the organization of all the web pages on our website. This question refers to the step of page layout for web page design. That's actually a link. If you click on it, it goes to Wikipedia. It talks about the specifics of page layout here. And not for the process of designing and deploying an entire website. Describe this step of page layout for web page design and reference one or more other web designers who explain their workflow. Be sure to cite using APA format references. Okay, so this, once again, this week is now focusing on design. You have the basics of the content, the HTML, which contains the content, and now we're going to talk about the design. And if you remember last week, I showed you this website, csszengarden.com. Let me paste that link again for you. The thing I like about this website I really like this website because it I'm looking at the sun. The sun's going to be in my eyes here in just a second. Excuse me, 1 second. Well, I put down the blind. Hold on. Now, when you think about the discussion, I want you to think about your approach to this problem, this website. Once again, if you remember from last week, the HTML file is the same for all these designs. It's the CSS file and the pictures that are different. So if you click and look at all these designs, there's 218 that show up here. Now, the process that people went through to solve this problem is really the process that I want you to start thinking about for this week's discussion. And some of the questions that you would begin to entertain are obviously color and the layout, the font, graphics and where they would be located and positioned, the design, whether or not it would scroll down further. Obviously, it would be bordered left and right. Another thing that you need to think about is if somebody is coming to your website with a small, like a cell phone, and your design might dynamically get smaller. In other words, involve less content based upon the size of the smartphone or a tablet or a small monitor. But then you also have large monitors. I have a large monitor right here. And so keeping that in mind, making your design so that it dynamically fills out the area. And some of the other principles that you have already learned in regular graphical page layout. So that's the approach that these graphic designers have taken in designing their web page. They've got it all laid out, and some people even take Photoshop and do a mock-up of their whole page layout, and then they cut it up, and it's called slicing, and they slice up the areas. Some of the areas become graphics, whereas other areas have become dynamic content that can change from one page to the next. All right, so as you think about it, what are some approaches from your own experience in the graphical design classes that you've been in before? What do you see as some of the connections or correlations between designing some of these designs that you see and the design courses that you've had in the past where you've used Photoshop or where you've used Adobe Illustrator or InDesign? What are some of the concepts when you approached a design project that you had to keep in mind and let's talk about those briefly. If you'd like, you can talk, you can either chat or you can use the microphone.
I already posted, I know, surprise, surprise, to the discussion. And I found a really neat article on the F layout and the Z layout. So I thought that would be interesting for the other students because I loved it. I thought it was really good.
And is the F layout dealing with the eye movement?
Yes, it's how your eye looks at the screen, and they have scientific studies where they know that because of how your eyes look at a screen, that's how it actually flows. And they have the Z movement. They said the Z layout is good for Like when you have where you want people to sign up. And it doesn't have to be the full page. It can be part of a page.
Yeah, this is an important aspect, eye movement. The F is basically the hot spots here are indicating where a person's eyes have been traced to go. And so if you look at the content of and design of a website, you'll find that the important things and menu items can be up along here or down the side. And see. And so the F design is what she's referring to there. Yeah, clutter-free. So let's look at some of the one. Does anybody else have any other web sites that they enjoy going to where they see different web designs? CSS Zen Garden is my favorite. Does anybody have any others that come to mind of where they go and look at web pages or web designs or possibly even web portfolios? The design of websites. The Google web page is very simple. It's always been simple. But if you go to some of these other news portals, you'll see that their design of their website, for example, Yahoo, see there's the F here. You know, if you've got menu content across here, and then you have a picture taking this area, and then here some a bar that you can scroll from content to content. So that's an F design. Frankly, you've got the sidebar also, but it's indicative of like a secondary. This is primary importance. And then here is just secondary importance. Let's try another website design. Oops, there we go. Do you see the F going on here? See here they have drop downs. These designs, this is another aspect of web design that you need to keep in mind, and that is interactivity. It's one thing to just sit and look at the website, but then to bring in the aspect of movement and change and interactivity. JavaScript is something we won't go into, but it's the third component of website design. HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript. And JavaScript is actually in a programming language that it's not Java, but it's actually JavaScript that browsers recognize, and it's for interactivity. So in other words, if I mouse over the event of just me taking my mouse and putting it over this link, and then this whole menu coming up, and then whatever I mouse over it automatically, that's all done using JavaScript. Now, at this point, it's all done with the browser communicating with the server. So that's interactivity, and that's also part of a component part of your design of your web page layout design. Just for a second, I want to tell you about interactivity that starts with typing. So let's say typing, if I type the letter A, for example, as you can see, Amazon automatically goes to the server and brings back the most common search items that start with A. So that's interactivity also. It's not just mouse movements. And now we're going to get into interactivity with letters of the keyboard. And so every letter that I type, it's going to go back to the server and come back and give me options that filter down what it thinks I'm trying to type, with the most popular search items beginning with those letters. So each time I type in a letter, it goes to the server and comes back. So there's letter interactivity going on here in the design. And these are forms. These are called forms that we're dealing with here. A search form, for example, is what is going on here. Same thing with Google. Google does the same thing where they where you type in a letter and it goes and it literally it knows in this area where I live the top four search items are actually, I think these are two that I've typed in, and they're in my web history. So if I just do A, these are the top two here are ones that are in my search history. So they're probably cookies that have been left on my what I'd search, and the browser actually can write files to its to an area on your computer. But these two here are the most popular that I haven't used, and so this kind of interactivity is actually being driven by a database in the background. Let me check everybody's. Yes. So these are all aspects of web design that you have to keep in mind. The real estate of your design, obviously, but now because it's hypertext and it's multimedia, now we have to deal with that other element of design. So we've just gone over some of the steps of planning your web page design. And you can click on this link and read more in more detail on that. Now let's go look at our textbook and start reading about and start going over that. I think I'll turn off my webcam. Okay. Yeah, we'll go over the reviews for chapter 3 and 4. You asked the question, what made the search forms? Search forms are implemented in HTML, just the regular HTML. And then the JavaScript is tied to the forms so that it can go. And in fact, this is a very advanced concept. It's called AJAX. It's an acronym. Asynchronous JavaScript. I forget what AX stands for, but that's the acronym, and that's the capability of a website to do this right here, where you type in a letter and it automatically responds to that without you having to hit a return. See, I never hit search. I just typed in a letter. And I can even go, and the first hit, I still haven't clicked search. I typed something in, and the first hit, it went ahead and searched for me as if I had typed search. All that capability is called being done using Ajax, which is an application of JavaScript that we were just talking about a moment ago. So, does that answer your question? Yes, Ajax. JavaScript and Ajax. All right. What you see here on this first page is a look at the CSS. Now, this is not HTML, and as you can see, we've got comments in there. But you can see, if you look closely, like on line number 2 there, you can see the name of a tag that the CSS is pointing to, the body tag. Now, it's just got the word body, and it's simply saying, okay, browser, when you read this, I want you to take these default values and use them while you are inside the body tag. And you come down here and UL, OL, DL, it's unordered link, ordered link, a list, sorry. And these are the directives. Here, the H1 tag, H2, H3. Now, this is not the tag itself in HTML. This is actually just the tag name that we put here in our CSS, and this makes these instructions here be associated with each of these individual tags over in the HTML or down in the HTML, wherever it might be. JavaScript is built into the browsers, but Java is different. Java is a runtime program, and it's not at all the same as JavaScript. If you have a browser, then you have something that uses JavaScript. But if you have a program that is written in Java, that's different, and then you'll need that Java runtime. Have you ever downloaded the Java runtime before? You may have had to download Java before. This is if the program is written in Java, you'll need the Java runtime. But if you just have a regular browser, it will run JavaScript, which is built into the browser. Cindy, what does that mean, many times over? Now, JavaScript is running in all the browsers. Java has been ported to all the computers, and so all right. So what is CSS? So we've talked about it already, and you can see they talk about HTML version 1 and version 3, and now we're up to version 5. And as HTML has evolved, CSS has come around, and and the whole evolution of trying to pull away and separate content from design has become more and more explicit with each release of HTML5 and CSS. The boundary line of trying to separate those two has continued. So here you can see HTML. These are the tags, these HTML tags. And we could open this up and see the formatting. Go ahead and do that. Code side, design side. And you can see built into there is the word a font tag. Now here we are, this is the old way of doing things. We're mixing font name and size and color information right in the middle of in the same code as the HTML tags. So this is the old way of doing things. They made it very difficult to maintain and to maintain a design across your entire website. Because now with CSS, as they remove the two, it allows them to take all the CSS and actually put it in its own file, and you just need to include that file at the top of your HTML file, link to it, and all that CSS gets brought into the context of your HTML. Your browser will first read that file, and then and if you ever have to make a change, all you would have to do is make a change in your CSS file, and it impacts your entire design across your entire website. So it's really modularized that way. But this is the old way of doing it, where you had it all together. That's HTML formatting. Now the CSS formatting is the new way, and here you can see it's a lot cleaner because now we have, and we don't have our own separate file, but we do have it all at the top. And as you can see, instead of having to put font, all this down here, now we just have a little instruction here that says the H1 tag, that's this one right here, it will assume to have a font family of Verdana, font size of 20 point, and a color of blue. See, all we had to do is one time, and now it's all decided there. So every time we have H1, it's going to have these rules in effect. So you can see these two files, they look the same, but this one is the old way of doing it, and this is the new way where you extract, remove away, separating it. This is actually called an embedded style sheet, an embedded, because you can embed it within a style tag. But eventually you'll learn that you can actually pull this out into its own file and then link the HTML file to that file. And then you don't have to edit all the files with the, if you want to change the design, because it'll be all in one file. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, how's everybody doing? 5 means totally get what you were talking about. 1 means I'm totally lost. Awesome. Sally's got it figured out right down to the decimal. 3 is really not bad. 1s and 2s I want to talk to. If there's any 1s and 2s, I want you to connect with me because it's important that I don't lose you. Sally, can you turn on your microphone? Is that a possibility?
I had to put the lowest number on there, so you have to make me talk, didn't I?
Yeah. So,
no, I'm just still skittish about it. I'm sure I got it. I got it last week, and I didn't think I did.
oh, okay. So you're.
And I didn't even call DJ.
You guys, that's funny, man.
See, you got us putting numbers on there, and we're afraid to put the low number so you don't call on them.
Well, I like it when you're honest, though. So now the one principle I want you to really be grasping right now is simply that CSS is the new way of doing styling, and it's a way to remove all those instructions which used to be interspersed inside your HTML document. Now we separate them, and now you can see up here we've got design instructions are all separated, and you don't have them anymore down in here. But you end up having the same result. So the only point I really want you to understand right now is that CSS allows you to remove and extract out design information. That's about it.
Yeah. I get it.
All right, good.
Okay, 3.174. How's that? Is that better? Get that.
That's what I like to hear. Above a 3 is good. All right, well, thank you. So now the new way is extracting it out and putting it aside and allowing these little directives here to point to the tags that they relate to. Now, keep in mind, you're going to have these default settings. Each tag has its own default font and size and everything. That's to be expected, and each browser pretty much has the same set of defaults. What these do is they override those defaults. That's really what you're trying to accomplish, just override the defaults. So let's look at the HTML defaults file here. The HTML defaults, this is without any styling going on, this is what you get. Yeah, it is, Cynthia, it is much easier. So this is with no styling. So what you can see here is the size of the font. This particular tag is going to cause this size of font, this color of font, and the type of font face. So each of these are the defaulted styles you can see over here. Without having to specify any styling information, this is what you get. Now, obviously, CSS is going to come along and we're going to try to change these defaults, but so that's the default settings. And these are typically, this set of things are being defaulted by the browser. By the way, you see this little chart right here. There's actually a more up-to-date place you can go on the internet to find out, and that would be W3 Schools browser support and statistics. So if you ever wanted to know how popular a given browser is, then you can go to this web page. Let me chat it to you. See, it's important because when you are a web designer, you have to anticipate how popular the browsers are that you're working for to create and make sure it works in. And this changes every month. And it used to be Internet Explorer several months ago or years ago. If you scroll down, you can see the whole history of the evolution of these browsers. Now, why this is important is because you need to anticipate the types of browsers that are going to be used on your website. And this is a good place to kind of give a good idea, get a good idea for how popular certain versions are. So if you go way back to 2002, which is 13 years ago, AOL had this, look at this, Internet Explorer had at its, look at that, a peak, 88%. And do you remember Netscape started up? Well, as the years go by, watch this Internet Explorer because it loses market share, its usage. Netscape eventually gets threatened by Microsoft and then goes out of business, unfortunately, because Microsoft won the lawsuit. But watch Internet Explorer. Here's Mozilla Firefox, and as you can see, it kind of breaks apart right here into Mozilla and Firefox. Netscape is going out of business, as you can see. Internet Explorer is reducing as the years go by. So it's really important for you to keep track of the evolution of browsers. Here, Opera is picking up here more and more. Internet Explorer is down. Firefox is coming up. But then you'll see Google Chrome, September 2008, 3.1%. But watch Google Chrome take off. And it takes more and more market share year after year after year after year. And look where it is now. 63.7%. In 7 years, it's taken up almost 2/3 of the market. And look at this, Internet Explorer, only 7.7%. So this is important because, first of all, you want to make sure your website works in Google Chrome. And after that, you want to focus on making sure it works in Firefox and all the formatting, and it has the same behaviors, because sometimes some browsers are a little bit different, and so your web design needs to be tested in each of these different environments. But firstly, Chrome, and then Firefox, and then after that, IE, and so on. Yeah, one day IE might arrive. So that's what this is. And you can see this is a little bit dated, January 2012. See that? In January, the web W3C published statistics shown in the image above. So that corresponds to 3 years ago, over 3 years ago. All right, let's start to talk about the CSS box model. If you approach your design using boxes, anticipating various boxes in areas on your design, then these concepts will come into play, because in each given box you have the left margin, top margin, right and bottom. Then you have the padding, and there's the content will be inside that area. This would be the border. If you wanted to turn on a border or not, that would be the blue line. And then so padding would be between the content that you have and the border. So let's open up the box model here. So there you can see that we have the border. See right here, we've added a style now, and it's called the border style. It's associated with the H1 tag, or a paragraph tag, or a strong, or emphasis. So I have used an H1 tag right here. Therefore, the border is going to kick in. Each of these are going to kick in, actually, because I've used H1 tag, and because this rule here, this style, these styles are going to be associated with an H1 or a P or a strong or an EM. So there's the border. And then I have a P tag for paragraph, and it too inherits this, and it too has a border. But we're not done, because we also said if you encounter a strong tag or an EM tag for emphasis, it too will have a border. And so here we have the strong tag, and immediately it puts the border on there. So all you have to worry about is the major tag, and then let the styling do the rest. And here's another P tag, and there's paragraph. So as you can see, the rules of this CSS ended up impacting each of these various tags. And when I used the tag, it took on these rules. Now remember, we talked about content versus presentation. And content is what you find in HTML, and that's that example I gave you of CSS Zen Garden. So the content, if you click on the HTML right here, it's the same HTML page. This page is the same content. It looks bland and empty right here, but that's because there's no styling and no graphics. It took that page, web page there, and then along with this CSS design right here, and this is CSS. So what they did is, now you can recognize that HTML tag, body tag, and you can start to recognize all this is what the designers ended up tweaking. Just this. They did not tweak the HTML file. This is the file that they tweaked, and they put all these different directives in their styling. And we haven't yet gone over what this means here, the colon link. That's an anchor tag, and when it's in its regular link state, these are called states. This is if it's an anchor tag, and if they've clicked on the link before, then it's going to change the color. Oh, well, yeah, it goes from that color to that color. If you're just hovering over the link, or if that link has the focus, or it's the active link, then it's going to have this color. So as you can see, and this, we're going to talk about these later, but when you put a dot, you can actually name your div tags and identify styles with the name. And so we're going to get a little, I've been telling you all this time, it's just HTML tags here, but as you can see, it can get a little fancy. Now we have HTML plus a state of that tag, and here we actually have names of div tags that you can begin pointing to. So, and here we get even a little more complex in the CSS. What this means is any H1 tag that is found inside a header, then apply this H2 tag inside a header, and so on. But that's it. You know, we'll go over the details of this, but there's an example right there of a CSS design that was so good that it was featured as one of the top 218 designs. And you just got through seeing basically this. See, in fact, look at that. That looks just like, oh, yeah, that's it. CSS formatting. This is the one you've already begun learning about. See, that's the simple H1, P, and there's the thing. And here's the one we just looked at. See, there's a P and so on. So you don't need to learn all these different things in here, but I just want you to understand how the CSS works. Yeah, content is HTML, the words. So here's the content, for example, of this design of, so the HTML file is the content here. Whoops, I had it right here. No, there, yeah, right here. This is the content and the words, and then the styling is separate. Okay, Cynthia, can you turn on your microphone for a second?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, I think I now understand where you are thinking. What you have, I think where you were thinking is that your differentiation was between, you were kind of thinking that this was presentation and this is content.
Exactly.
Okay, I want you to think that this is code and this is the result of styling. In fact, we should do this one here because this one is a CSS. This is code. The content is really here, but it's stylized by the CSS. So I want you to differentiate code because here, let's see, I got to turn off somebody's microphone. Hold on a second, I got to figure out how to turn off. Oh, no. Yeah, that's fine. So Cynthia, the code, I want you to think of, see these words here?
Yes.
That is content. The content are the words. And HTML is where you see the content. Now the presentation is how this affects that content.
Okay. I was separating the code being the content and the presentation being in our design window.
Yes. So the words here is the content, and how the words are displayed is the presentation of that content. So you get both here. The HTML is going to take care of the content. The CSS is going to take care of the styling.
Okay.
So if we do a view page source, we'll see all the HTML and the content. That is the code. So HTML will take care of the content. And you can see up here at the very top, here is where we actually link to the CSS. Remember I told you how you can link to an external file? That's what that is. It's just this one line here. This one line is, let me see if I can do this. I'm going to act as though I'm on their server, and I'm going to bring up that one file. There it is. So this is the CSS. So the presentation will be the marriage of the design information with the content. And so that's the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so they call that those selectors. The different types of CSS. You can put CSS in different places. What do you mean, DJ? How do I not get dropped? Dropped, what do you mean? Oh, I don't know. I've had a lot more open than this before. So let's see. So CSS can have, you can drop this CSS in different places. The embedded one is this one that we were looking at here. This is called embedded. When you find a style tag inside your head area and you've got CSS in here, they call this being embedded. It's embedded because the CSS is actually living in the same file. That's called embedded. It's not the greatest way of doing it, but it has its purpose for being there. Now, inline, we haven't seen any examples yet. Inline is where it's kind of like going back to the old way of doing things, where you put the styling right with your tags. And I think they're going to give an example of it, but it's where you have a style attribute, and you could add a style attribute right in your tag. And here you would, this is a style attribute in this case, and then you can put inside there things like the CSS. This is called being inline. Now, you might look like you're going backwards now and reverting to an old way of doing things, but it's inline allows you to go after individual, instead of having the global H1 selector. Here, being inline, you can override that global and put it right inside there with the style attribute. Now, this is not a style tag; it's a style attribute, because the tag is the one that comes right after the less than sign. And as you can see, it doesn't close until over here. So this is an attribute style. This is a tag style. So here we have embedded, and here we have inline. And they've got a third one, which is the linked, and that was the example that I showed you with the CSS Zen Garden. This is a linked. So here, the CSS file is completely separate, and it's linked to, using the link tag, to this separate file. So those are the three different ways. Now, W3 Schools actually has a pretty good explanation of this if you need a second opinion. And the inline here, let me see if I can search for specifically. If you want a second opinion of this, inline embedded, and let's go with those two. We have an external style sheet. That's the one that CSS Zen Garden is using. See that right there? They call it external style sheet when the whole file is a separate file altogether. And that's the external style sheet. And then the internal style sheet, that's also the name for embedded. As you can see, there's the style tag, and there's our directives inside, so it's embedded. Or internal, it's the same thing. Internal or embedded is the same, they're interchangeable. And then here's inline. And remember how I just went right in there and added an attribute called style and then put in quotes and put the style right there. And inline is going to have the last say. And it's kind of like, in fact, this starts to talk about the idea of cascading. Let's say you were walking into a hotel and somebody greets you at the door. Well, that's kind of like encountering the external style sheet. It's like the general thing that's going to impact everything. But then you get to, let's say you get to the front desk and they start asking you some more specific questions, and that's when the internal style sheet will take over. Sometimes designers will use all three. They'll first link their external style sheet, that's the general rules, and then they'll include a section after the link statement, and they'll just have the style section, and that'll override the things just for this whole web page, not the whole website. The external, this one here, the external one, this is for impacting your entire website, whereas this one will impact just the one web page that this is declared on. But then you go one step further, and so you go, now you get to the bellboy, and he says, now what room do you need to go to? And that's where he has the final say. So these inline style sheets, the inline styles, they have the final say on what's going to happen here in the H1. This will override anything. You know, the embedded style sheet or the internal style sheet will override anything that the external style sheet does, and then this will override that. So this is kind of an idea of the cascading going on. First, this gets you impacted your web page with that. Next, it's this, and then finally it's this. All right, let me stop for a second. On a scale of 1 to 5, how's everybody doing? It's funny. No more 3s. Come on, that's great. Good for you guys. Sally. Well, believe it or not, you are getting through some of the most difficult aspects of this week. What we've encountered, what we've gone over thus far is really, we're over the hump of what's difficult. So, yeah, and then as I mentioned earlier, you can have class and ID, and that will, now you can begin naming things, constructs, naming tags inside your web page, and then pointing to those named tags. So those two can be used to target. This is the syntax. This first field here is called the selector. You pick whatever tag, or in this case a class, or in this case an ID. You haven't yet seen examples of that, but here we have multiple tags. So if it's a TH tag or a TD tag, then this will apply. And here we have a descendant. which means first we encounter a div tag, and then the paragraph within that a div tag will have these styles. So you can see they call this descendant here. P is a descendant of div because it's the context of this P we're looking for is the one within the div tag. Now, the cascade theory describes how the order and placement rules in the style sheet or on the page affects the application of styling. Remember how I told you, at the very top you can link to an external style sheet, and then underneath that you can have a style tag inside your head, which will be your internal style sheet, and then you can have inline. So that's the cascade theory. Inheritance, and that is another concept that's going on. That oh, do you guys want to take a break? Let's take a 5-minute break. I'll pause the recording.